Welcome back to Not a Straight Line with me, Pete Daly-Dickson. This is the show that explores the non-linear journeys of artists and entrepreneurs to inspire you as you zigzag through your own non-straight line life. And this week, I teased out the story of the storysmith himself, Nico Jones. With a background in music and animation, Nico began as an artist, but has since distilled the essence of what he loves into entrepreneurial storytelling for thought leadership. His clients work with him to unravel their origin story and unpack their journey into stories that can change the world. I was fortunate enough in this episode to do the same for him, following the thread of his growth from the first innocuous zag at 13 years old to where he's at today and the value he's providing to so many through who he is. Energetic, pensive, and profound are the words I'd use to describe Nico and this conversation. And as a reflexive discussion around storytelling, it shows not only Nico's abilities, but also the kind of vulnerable space that I like to create here on Not a Straight Line. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Nico. As with all episodes at the beginning here, the three of us will just take a minute or two for a few physiological sighs just to regulate us and bring us into this conversation space. So if I want to close our eyes and just take the first physiological sigh, 2 breaths in through the nose. And again. And one last time. Nico Jones, welcome, sir, to the Not a Straight Line podcast. It's a joy and a privilege to have you here with me.
Hey, Peter, thanks for having me. What a buzz it is to join you today.
Just for the sake of the listener, I know where you are situated, but where are you geographically in this wonderful world of ours?
In the world today, I find myself in the city of York. That's original York, the first York there ever was before they made a new one.
Not the New York.
This is the original York. That's where it is, man. That's where it's happening.
Wonderful. Well, I'm sure over the next hour and a half or so, we'll find out how and why you're there. But right now, you and I, we're going to climb up to the top diving board and we're going to jump into this Not a Straight Line conversation. What came to mind for you when you read that question that I sent you and send all my guests? What did come up for you straight away?
So, question being, what were the major, how did you phrase it? Like turning points? Was that the phrase used?
Yeah, when you reflect back on your life and think of all the zigs and the zags.
The zigs and zags.
What's a moment where either the zag felt the most like the biggest zag, or the stakes felt the highest, or there's a lot of pressure, or whatever? Just that moment of high drama, if you like, to start the conversation off. You're a storyteller. Come on, you know what we're doing here.
Mate, I got zags up the wazoo. I got more zags than most people have had at breakfasts. It's a case of choosing the one.
Which is great, actually, from this conversation's perspective, because we can touch on all of them. But what's the one that comes up for you that resonates the strongest?
Sure. Well, as a storyteller, I'm sure you know that you can't just leap straight into the most dramatic zag and expect that to have any effect that you haven't built towards it. Usually the most dramatic zag in a story will come smacking towards the end of the second act. So kind of just leapfrog in there. So I've got a big professional zag in mind. But again, that's a bit like pro. It doesn't quite make sense unless you build to it. And yet the biggest zig, the most profound zig, was almost the one that had no pressure, no stakes attached to it, until you look back through the lens of hindsight and realize that if that zig hadn't been made, then really none of what follows happened. And that zig was a simple written note on a piece of paper that I put in a local music shop, where back in the mists of time, a music shop that sold physical music in the form of compact discs and even tape cassettes.
What are these things? What are these things you are talking of, sir?
Like, you probably even lived through vinyl, right? I came to vinyl as like a hipster coming back through time. But look, my day was CDs, and I talk forever about like how that is a thing and should continue to be a thing. But nonetheless, the little note that I put on the bulletin board outside that shop simply read, "The guitarist seeks band." That was the zig that led to everything that followed.
How old were you?
You're talking 15, 16. You're talking like smacking, like bored out of my skull in secondary school, but you're not able to focus on anything that didn't excite me, and nothing was grabbing me at secondary school. But then music grabbed me outside it. But something can still grab you and you not do anything about it. And back in those days, no access to information, it's this ability to, I think, act on a zig that you can sort of see happening. And like, just, I don't know what the heck's going to happen.
Had music been grabbing you for a while, just both from a playing and a consumption point of view? Like, how old were you when you remember music really meaning something to you?
Yeah. So this is interesting because it plays into what I do now. So this is like looking back again with the benefit of hindsight and seeing how all this stuff made sense. I was a kid who was super into films, super into films, as most kids are. Like, why wouldn't you be? It's transporting you to another world. It's just doing what storytelling should do in an area of your life where it's easiest than ever it will be again to suspend disbelief. Super into films. But back in that day, not much in the way of video cameras. And even one I did get for Christmas, nothing I could make with that thing is going to approximate even remotely the thing I can see on screen. So I was super into films, would watch them to death and loved them. But the most intense experience I had as a kid, I had to reconcile this with my story leading into my professional life because it was so acute, I can't just ignore it, was seeing a covers band play a song at some local arts center. And it basically like on like a spiritual level, like peeling the skin off my face, like just what am I seeing here? What am I feeling? I don't have a word for this feeling, but I want more of it. And it was a covers band playing "Girl from Mars" by Ash. That's all it was, and it was some young teenagers, some skeevy teenagers, and some old guy on drums. I love old guys. I am an old guy, right? But this guy was like reading the sheet music I know now for this song. It's all over the place. I just remember his hands being a blur. I remember the singer looking cool, and something about it just like got into my. It's not like it wormed its way in. It like it just eviscerated any sense of what I thought was interesting or fun in the world, and left it with this just shimmering sense of like, oh my god, like what just happened? But still, after that, this is where it leads into the note. It's like it's not like I went away and then started learning guitar, because even then, like what get guitar lessons. Guitar lessons aren't going to get me feeling like that. It took a while to move to it. In the end, it took Oasis, basically. So I got super into Ash, and their songs are quite hard to play, right? Quite complicated. But I remember getting a guitar some Christmas. I can't quite remember when. And an Oasis songbook. And those songs are like, less so definitely maybe because I wasn't a working class hero from Manchester. I was just some kid who liked like fantastical stories and stuff like that. But you could play these Oasis songs. And it was like, oh, okay, I can be inspired by something and get a buzz. Now I'm getting that buzz through writing my own dreadful songs, but like flipping it, they're turning me on at the time. And then if I can get a room with other people, it's like there's something happening here of a buzz, of having an idea, putting it into a shape, getting a reaction. And it's way more exciting than anything I've been asked to interface with at school. So now I'm at school and I'm just daydreaming about this stuff. But it was only when I got together with a few other people who felt the same way that obviously that stuff compounds. It actually leads somewhere. So that was the zig.
So you mentioned that there was something that experience you had with the band was something that you had to reconcile with what you did professionally later on. What was that reconciliation?
Yeah. Every business or entrepreneur who's bringing something story related to the space has to have their way of doing it, right? So if I help it, I help a lot of people work through their origin stories. And there's tons of like ins and outs and intricacies to the system I've created. Even on the face of it, it's very simple. But effectively, when you're talking about the first chapter of your life, as I'm doing now, there's no point in doing it unless you can reconcile it to where you are now. And there's all sorts of really interesting ways that could come up. But on the face of it, what do? I help trailblazing entrepreneurs get their ideas in order in the form of core stories so they can become legendary thought leaders. What the heck has that got to do with like a covers band, right? Now, if I had a client who told me those two things and they were like, I've got no idea how those two connect. I have a good idea of where to start. What's your instinct? Can I put you on the spot?
Well, no, that's not fair. That's not fair because I'm the host. I asked the questions, and these spaces are as much for my guests to like demonstrate to the world how they are so freaking good at what they do. So yeah, on the spot, I'm scared of coming up with something which you go, oh, Pete, call yourself a storyteller. Come on. But I've also given myself a bit of time to think, and I suspect what it might be is that when we when we talk to people about who we are and how we be and how we help, we wanted to create a feeling in them. We don't just want to impart knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. And it comes down to, like, that word feeling could do a lot of heavy lifting, but effectively, the thing that got me in that moment of seeing that band play, like, it wasn't the song. The song played a part and the situation played a part, but there was something like beneath all of it that almost defies categorization. Like, it was an energy, it was a buzz, and it was and it was just unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. And it was specific to that time and those people. And it was just like, it was glancing against something that was just bigger than I'd ever, come close to getting a hold of before. And that now drives a lot of what I do, basically. But that was the moment. And usually there is this kind of defining moment, as I'm sure you'll know, where something intense happens early on in someone's life that just shocks them somehow. And it might not kind of bear fruit or reveal itself in a zig until later. But as they look back, and it's like, it was the first experience where they really glanced against like what got them fizzing on a fundamental level. And if you were to really leapfrog to the present day, even without talking about what any of us do as a business, I firmly believe that whatever it is you're doing, whatever it is that you're up to in the world, the more you can angle it and bring in elements of that original energy, that first one, but the happier you'll be. And if you're some kind of thought leader talking about stuff seems to have nothing to do with it, if it was that intense when you were a kid, if it's the thing that comes to mind, then odds are it is shaping the decisions you've made, but also what you're doing right now in ways you hadn't considered. But also, if you haven't got a hold of it yet, as I'm sure your guests will find, the clearer you are on where you've been, the clearer you can be on why you are where you are currently, but it also signposts the way you will act going forward if you get clearer on it, right?
Is that potentially what, I mean, before we hit record, Nico, I shared briefly the kind of feedback I was getting from my guests. Do you think that's partly what it is, that inadvertently I'm helping them see what it was that got them going?
Yeah, and not inadvertently either. In our chat that we had before you press record, it's clear that that's what happened, right? People come to this space, they get asked the right question by someone who, if I was to say someone who knows what they're doing, that's too reductive and it's not correct. It's a sense the emotional awareness of asking the right questions to someone, removing yourself from it completely, isn't it? And just looking for these connections, but where other people might not see them. And it's almost like it's the ultimate wood that you can get lost in, which is your own journey. And part of my it's a double-sided coin. So I come at this like a filmmaker a lot of the time, and I can see someone's information as a puzzle to be cracked. But really go force yourself to just ask questions. It's like, look, is that bit that happened here? It feels like it's a kind of a future echo of what you're doing here. And a lot of the time, the really cool things, if you delve into the rest of that early moments, you start to see echoes of the problems that people solve for their clients now, if you just ask the right questions through the lens. So I'm sure, like, is there a better buzz than like seeing those light bulbs go off in someone's head?
No, there isn't.
It's just wild, isn't it? It's cool.
Yeah. You mentioned before you put that sign up in the newsagent, did you say it was, that nothing was exciting you at school at all? So nothing academically, nothing to do with sports. It was just dead for you.
Yeah, nothing springs to mind. It's like I quite liked biology, so I ended up doing it at A level.
Right.
How's that a career path? You know what I mean? It's just wild. I did end up taking like media studies at A level. And like I could do that because you had to like analyze, you could analyze a scene from Terminator 2 or something. So I had a natural propensity for it. But I can't say that like, oh, I fell in love with media at that point. No, early stage, it was all about music because it was rad.
Did you have any brothers and sisters growing up?
No, not. I got a half brother in Colombia, but in UK it was just me.
Okay. So apart from this revelation of music, what other memories do you have of your childhood growing up? And was it in York, or did you move to York later?
It was like early childhood was in Rufford, which is a village on the outskirts of York. And we moved away. So everything that I just described with music happened in Gisborough, which is a bit more of a, like, dare I say, standard northern market town in the UK that is not massively inspirational all around. You know what I mean? And again, like, pre-internet, it's like I had films. I watched Star Wars a lot. I watched James Bond a lot. I watched Battlefield, all of the classic, like the 80s franchises. Like that was what I loved to do and was just a consumer until I had some way of expressing something. You obviously don't know what it is.
So what happened as a result of putting that note in the newsagent?
Yeah, nothing. It's as prosaic as starting like a dreadful metal band with some new friends. But it was like, it just, as soon as you add people into your crazy schemes and then they add you into theirs, and it's just like-minded, they've got the same buzz, or at least like a harmonically compounding buzz. If you add their buzz to yours, it makes it into something new, right? So then you're writing all these songs together. And have you ever been into music? Have you ever been like a musician or anything like that?
Well, yeah, I learned and played the trombone at school in the school orchestra and the Hong Kong Youth Symphony Orchestra. I could look with hindsight, with my interest in music now, I would love to have played in a jazz band.
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
So if you were to start a jazz band in your teens, right, it's like you get this massive buzz from it. And there's this new band buzz when you get to like 4 or 5 people who want the same thing in a room and then to create something new out of it. And it's wicked. And you get a local gig and all your friends come. And there's this like maybe 3, 4, 5 gigs in. It's like, it's just the best thing ever. And then you plateau because you're not going to do anything with it. But effectively, that was the first outlet for, you might call it creative energy, but let's just say energy in general. It was basically, I can get something out of myself and I can turn it into something that I can hold or hear. And that was the thing about it. And I ended up like sucking off college and going to do like performing, I think, was it a music performance or something in Middlesbrough. And so that was the divergence. To go back to the original question, if I hadn't zagged then, what was I doing? I was doing biology, IT, and media studies at college. Like, where was that going to lead next? It could be somewhere thrilling, but it wouldn't have been where it is now. And that wouldn't have happened had it not been for that little post-it note in the music shop window.
And as you were kind of getting together with your new friends, did you think or hope that this might be your life, rock and roll? Or was it always just a kind of an outlet?
Look, it was probably pure outlet because, again, I'll harp on about it, but I genuinely think it's a massive factor in that when you're in a small town, again, it's this recurring theme between what's in your head or what you think might be possible versus what you can see around you. So we could like buy the music magazine Kerrang, and we're reading stuff about these bands that are making it. Basically, getting stuck on the behind the scenes stories around these bands, the mythologies and legends that get created up around it, but that's almost a separate thing. But it's like, how do we become that? Where's the information around that? How do we get that information at that point in time, like 97, 98? What the heck do we know? Without changing our locations and going and talking to people who've done it, which I wasn't really doing. So basically there was no route through. It's like, oh, let's make a demo. I guess I know that like I've seen in films that bands made demos and like, who are you gonna send it off to? It's like some shit metal band sending a demo off. It's like, so I think it was more just an outlet. It was almost, and this is like a bit of a recurring theme throughout. It's just, first and foremost, there is the creation of the thing, of the moment. And that's to an extent all that matters. And there's always been this like default, again, underlying assumption that of course needs to be challenged when you need to make some money out of something. Is like, look, get that right, and that's the most important thing. The rest will take care of itself, So yeah, it was more of an outlet and didn't go anywhere. That music thing didn't go anywhere.
But where did it go? You said you sacked off college purely because it just didn't. I mean, you could have studied music at college, I guess.
Well, here we go. So it's a very easy course to chart now. So I went and did music at college because that was the thing I could do at that time. I was a fair guitarist, right? Decent, not too shabby at all. And then it's like, right, university age comes around and it's like, hey, what am I going to do? I got no idea what I want to be. I mean, a session guitarist or something, but don't know any information about how really to go about that. So what am I going to do? At that point, it's like go to university, study something to do with music. So I ended up studying creative music technology at university. And my thing at that point was like guitar epics. I'd gone from Oasis, and usually when people are into Oasis, and that's what brings them in, they tend to diverge. And here's a zig and a zag. A lot of folks they might go to the Beatles, then they might go to Hendrix, Stones, Dylan, and they almost go down this legit. Well, let's not say legit. Let's say, I don't know, it's just the fucking best music of all time, right? Isn't it? But I didn't know that then. I went the
OG.
Yeah, like I went either way, and I was a bit more like Metallica, Iron Maiden, guitars, and because it's impressive. It's more like in your face. It's more spectacular, isn't it? So at that point, I was like, oh, I'm quite good at this, and I was making these guitar epics with lots of harmonies and stuff, and it was just about possible to record on your computer. So now I could just make these epic musical compositions, and that was the energy that took with me to university, doing more and more of these things. Like I was in bands and stuff at university as this technology thing was unfolding. But really, I was like, how far can I push this? And I was like, no one else can do this. But the reactions tailed off from other people, predictably. At the time, I was like, why aren't people getting it? And my muso friends were like, oh my God, that's mind blowing. But in terms of like getting a reaction out of someone, that became more like, that's not really working. But then here's the second fulcrum point, was the Canon XM1 that came out, the digital video camera. So previously, I'd messed around with video cameras because I was like into.
You said that in hushed tones. It's like,
yeah.
Well, no sense of reverence for it.
I do. I'll impart as much reverence as anyone can handle into that little that no one else remembers. And why would they? Because it's not what the thing was; it's what it let me do. And everyone will have some little moment like this, right? It's just a video camera. It was one of the first mini DVs, right? So previously, I'd got a video camera for Christmas. I tried making little skits. I just wanted to make things, right? I just wanted to make things. But like I said before, nothing I could create with previously was anything like what I'd see on screen. But then this came out, and there was a new digital arts module on the course, and they showed you how to use this camera. So now you can go out, film some stuff. It's on a little tiny tape. We can get that tape into Final Cut Pro, as it was at the time, and start editing it and putting little effects on it. And I was like, all this stuff that I've been watching as films and taking in, I can now go and have a go at like taking a crack at. I can go and like film a slasher scene of someone getting stalked. And the big one was, there's this effect in After Effects, which at that time was like super early on. And there's a lightning effect. So it's like, even now when it starts, oh my God, I can create lightning. This is so wicked. But I figured out that if you straighten it, it looked like a lightsaber, right? And I was like, if I go film myself just like swinging a broom handle around I can get from Wilkinson's, if I put frame by frame this effect on it, it looks like I'm swinging a lightsaber around. All right, I wonder if I get my mate together, right? You be this person, I'll be this, and let's just have a little fight with a lightsaber with these poles. I think I can do this. I think I can turn it into a lightsaber thing. And honestly, like, look, these days it's like, fuck cares? Like, phone could probably do it. Back then it's like, oh my God, I get to be a Jedi now. I can do this.
And I guess if you weren't at music college, you wouldn't have been able to afford the software or the computers to be able to do that stuff.
No way. So that was a crucible for it.
So you're zigzaggy. You're zigzag. So like just going back to that note again, and that newsagent, which led you to that college at that time, that emerging technology. Wow, what a cool fucking story.
Well, it's like it is what it was. So whereas with the music, it's like, now I can write a song that feels like it's kind of like Ash or kind of like Oasis. Now it's like I can. And everyone else was like, after I'd done that, we've done a little skit with the broom handles. No one else cared about it. But I was like, this means we can make a 30-minute film, like a Star Wars. Fan film wasn't a thing at the time. But I wrote it all out, like with a pal. But I was like, I took it super seriously because I was watching a lot of Lord of the Rings at the time as well, which had tons of information on the making of how they put the stories together and whatnot. So I was taking all that without realizing it and then instinctively being able to sling something together that was Drek, but it was directionally correct. So I made this 30-minute Star Wars film that followed, not by luck, but by influence before I knew what any of it was, like some decent storytelling principles. And I would never have used those words at the time, not at all. But basically, it was like when you showed it to people, it got a reaction. It got that, oh my God, like you're having a lightsaber fight. And it was watchable. It got to the end. And it was just kids like, I was taking it very seriously, but they'd get to the end and they'd know that it had a structure to it. It was a shonky story. And I was like, that was it. That was done, man. That's what I was doing.
I was just going to say, where had that come from if it wasn't conscious? But I guess it was in your subconscious if you had been watching all of those films at such a young age. You don't have to be aware of something consciously for it to have an impact, I guess.
Do you know what? That's probably giving me a bit too much credit. The actual thing that happened was at university, I spent a lot of time watching the extended editions of Lord of the Rings back to back. The film, then the documentaries, then all the commentaries. And they tell you how storytelling works in that. They explain what makes it go, what makes it doesn't, where you need conflict, where you need don't. That was the crash course. Even though at the time I was just consuming. So that's where it came from. And then it's the Dunning-Kruger effect. It was like, well, I've watched all of these and no one else has in my immediate environment. So then I'm the director. I'm like, yeah, you got to do this. You got to do this.
What's that effect?
I believe the Dunning-Kruger effect is where like you get a little bit of knowledge and you suddenly kind of think you're the big man, the big person in town because you know a little bit more than the people around you. And you get found out sooner or later, but it gives you that initial boost of like, oh, I think I know what scene to start this with. I know where this guy needs to die. I know what has to happen here. I know how the music needs to work over here to make this into a big moment. So it all got instinctively applied, and it was rad. And that was really the moment that set the course for the next. It's all these little moments, isn't it? That just there's so much connective tissue in between them that I could just like turn down the volume off. But that was the next big one.
And can you, in the same way that you can connect the experience that you had when you saw that Ash song play for the first time with what you're doing professionally now, can you see the connection, the resonance between that moment that you've just described there and getting that camera and the work you did with it and what you're doing professionally now?
Yeah, that kind of gets probably makes a bit more sense later on. But effectively, it was at that time in my mind all about the making of the thing. So at that point, I can't see the connection. I'm just in the moment. I just want to make things. But there was this depth to what I was trying to do, like the depth to which I believed in the whole thing that was getting like further and further beyond just the mechanics of making something, even though I didn't realize it at the time. So it already really comes into focus towards near really where I am today, where it all sort of starts to make sense. But yeah, it was that through line at that point of just like, what can I make in this moment that's going to make me feel wicked as I'm doing it? That's going to get a reaction out of people. Initially, it was music. Then it became, I can get the bigger buzz from making something visual. There was a Star Wars film. And then through learning about the effects and how to do that in Final Cut, it was like, I can do animations now. Early motion graphics. And I did some of that for my long study at the time. It's like, I can sit at a desk and create these spectacular things without having to like go through massive physical hardship. And it's like, very basic stuff at the time, but like simple 3D stuff, camera moves. And it's like, there's something here. And that would always set the tone for the next step. So I was always looking for the next most spectacular thing that I can make. That was the thread of that point.
You're a creator in the purest sense of the word. That's been in you right from beginning. I mean, again, just going back to that first note, you wanted to create music, which is why you reached out. Do you think we all are? If we kind of strip everything back, do you think we are all creators?
This is the thing. So that if we're saying that there's something at the heart of us that's driving us, and you want to get beyond this idea before it becomes anything like a vision and a purpose, and certainly before it comes like a business plan, energy is about as base level as you can get. But then it's like, it's going to be different types of energy. So I might call it like core energy. And everyone's is going to have a different shape, isn't it? And I'm sure like plenty of people will have been, there'll be studies on this. People will know more about these energies. But was it creative energy? You could say it might have been something like big swing energy, or what if energy, or why not energy. And those are going to be, it's almost like, how much does it matter basically to define that, like what that is that's driving you? It's just this, you want to just see that energy with how you chose to build your expertise around it, I think. And then you start to get a feel for how it shaped things.
So when a new client comes to you and they've obviously got an expertise, they're in business and they might not be fully cognizant of, the connection between what they're doing now with that first kind of energetic experience as a child. What's the first thing you do with a new client to get them moving in the right direction towards joining these dots?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's the penny drops at different times for different people, right? So it's quite a nuanced and fully featured framework that I've developed. And effectively, you start at the beginning, then it begins exactly where we started today. But the thing is, when you're going through that for the first time, you get in those moments, you got to focus really on just telling them and vocalizing them and just getting clear on what even happened. Never mind rearranging things or trying to find the big answers. So you need some clay on the table. And then usually once you dig into what I would call the stories that you're telling right now around, the problems that you're solving and then what's going on in the world, you get more clay on the table. And then if you sort of look back towards those early times, you can sort of see how, like, what was making you tick, if they look at it a certain way and how it syncs up. I can give you quite an example that just happened in a call from the community that I run.
Love it. Go for it.
So let's say that the guy in there is he's an expert on AI. I remember when we initially were looking at his origin story, and it seems like a lot of folks, they kind of want the AI origin story to be, I got my first Commodore 64 and I just wanted to learn how it goes and all this stuff. But his wasn't quite like that. And he was like, well, I've done a load of different stuff. I just don't know how it plays into what I'm doing now. Because what he's doing now is like AI chatbots. That's quite reductive, but there's, AI chatbots. And he said all sorts of stuff. So how do we do that? So, okay, well, in searching for his, like, what I would call the caught the bug moment. So my caught the bug moment, right? That incredible moment with the covers band. Like, where's yours? And it's like, nothing's really quite coming up. So where it ended up as, there's no rule that says your origin story that's most powerful for you at the time has to begin when you were a kid. It's nice if it does, but his didn't. His actually began with him leaving the country. So he began in Britain, and when he was older, probably even post university age. He was like, I'm just gonna see what's out there in the world. Then discovered this like whole new realm of possibility. That was his like first chapter, was exploration in the world. What he ended up doing was jumping from discipline to discipline, company to company, and being like right on the edge of innovation. And just so happened that a lot of companies he was working for, they were super innovative, but then they missed what was just around the corner. One of them was like Kodak. They were the innovators, but they didn't see what was going to happen with digital. Another one was around licensing. I think worked for or did up for himself like a massive licensing thing. Ended up like, collaborating with Lucasfilm and stuff on some kind of Star Wars licensing. But then like eBay happened and anyone could make all these things, and that kind of collapsed. So it was clear that you could say that he was, on the bleeding edge of these initiatives all the time. How does that play into what I'm doing with AI now? And it's quite an easy story to tell on a logical level. You know when innovation is around the corner and when to bob and weave. But is that really what you're about? Do you love the idea of being at the forefront of technology, or do you thrive in disruption? Do you thrive on the edge? Are you chasing this buzz of, well, how come you're always at the front of something? Is it because you're a good businessman, or is it because you crave that? So it's easy to then frame it as something bigger than the cause and effect. In the same way that a story like Back to the Future, oh, it's about time traveling in a car. It's like, that's what happens. But it's actually about how do our choices affect our futures, affect our lives, affect our families. And it's what is your life about through a certain lens in a way that serves you right now, and it might evolve or change. And it's like being at the edge, free climbing was how he put it today. And it's like, yeah, that. And he'd never mentioned that before. Like that. So if you bring that energy to what you're doing now, which just happens to be AI, it transcends AI. But you get to bring that energy to your thought leadership around that. You see what I mean? And there's a piece of cake then. Once you've got a sense that that's the thing, you can then look back at the events of an origin story and go, right, this, not this, not this. Turn the volume up here, and then turn it into something that's like super powerful, super concise, and just hits the high points.
With all that stuff that you learned from Lord of the Rings, bringing back to that.
It's all the same stuff in different trousers, really.
Yeah, it is. So you just mentioned there about making choices. So just going back into the story you were telling earlier, you were starting to make choices about animation, and I guess now I'm kind of making assumptions, but I'm getting a sense that you're now kind of looking to go out into the world of work. Is this the sort of age that you are? So is that the choice that you're making then to go into the world of work with this kind of amalgam of skills that you've got that allows you to do these animations?
Yeah, it's like you got to the end of university and no one had the faintest idea of what they were going to do because it was too new in industry. I'll be generous and say it was too new in industry. And I remember like my mom at graduation asking my digital arts tutor, oh, so what should you do next? And he was just like, basically, I don't know, because kind of no one did. Again, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt here. So I ended up moving to Birmingham on a wing and a prayer with a couple of friends, and it was just like anything to get me out of Gisborough, the northern town, towards like, what can I do? Let's go to Birmingham. You do graphics, I can do graphics. Our other pal can do music. Let's go and do that for like corporate video clients, because the music guy had done work experience in an edit house, and that was it. And whereas me and the music guy were kind of just like happy-go-lucky, let's just do it, let's take care of itself. The other guy was like, how would we get work? How would we pay for things? And I was like, doesn't matter, just do it. So we did. And it didn't work. But
What didn't work? What didn't work in particular?
yeah, it's just like, oh, we're Foresight Visual Media. We'll do your graphics for your videos and your music. We don't know anything about entrepreneurship or how to build a business or how to solve problems or anything. And it was like, we managed to just about survive by being thrown some work by a mutual connection. And they ended up offering us jobs, the visual guys anyway. And so then it was like, I just get to make animations all day at this corporate video place. They provide the work. I just make better and better animations and basically make it up as I go, because the idea of a graphics department was a relatively new thing at the time. And that was like, I get to sit at a desk. Someone else brings the work. It's on the face of it, boring corporate stuff, like about electricians, accountants, lawyers, boiler repair stuff. but I would like do sweeping camera moves and make them explosive and exciting, and clients would love them and then pay for them. So the bosses liked me. I got the arm around the shoulder, some structure that I badly needed after being so all over the place. And then that was that major just, hey, it's a team mentality. We're making stuff. This seems to be the perfect thing. Until it isn't, then you have to move seasons again.
There's and I hope you don't mind the question. There's been a few things that you've mentioned and talked about that potentially indicate some aspect of neurodivergence. Does that resonate with you at all?
Essentially, I've never gone down that pulled on that particular neurodivergent thread of seeing. I don't know how you phrase it without wandering into something that could be non-optimized for the discourse at the time. But no, basically, I haven't ever considered that.
So you just said there that it works until it doesn't. So well, how and when and why did it stop working?
Yeah, I think there was a culmination of things. There was like around that time, it was, when my entrepreneurial peers of the moment, they kind of spent their 20s, figuring out how to do business and how not to do business. I went I had that baseline. I've got a paycheck and I'm doing good stuff at work. I had a lot of free time then, as you do in your 20s. So I got back into the music and started doing like progressive folk with my flatmate and making that super ambitious and epic and playing gigs. I I now got serious about the in fact what happened was the corporate stuff. It was like, look, this is fine, but I need to aim deeper with this. So I was like, well, what's the deepest you can aim? It's like write a novel. So in that period of time, I started going to a writing group, went down to 4 days a week at work. And that was the great second education around storytelling.
So hang on a second. So what? I don't want to just gloss over that. It just seems quite important to me that is it because you weren't feeling creatively fulfilled at work, even though you were kind of doing this amazing stuff? What was it that made you think that you had to go deeper?
Yeah, it was just, there's only so many like wicked animations you can make at a corporate video level before you have to like move through some gears to find some kind of fulfillment into management or whatever, or starting your own thing. At that point, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to, I don't know, I can't remember what I wanted to do or the rational thing. It was just like, it was probably just trying to work backwards from the solution. What would I love most to be in the world? Like an author, just a world changing author was probably my mentality at the time. But obviously, I don't know how the head to get there. I could join a writing group in a pub in Moseley Village in Birmingham. And that's what I did. And I was like, this is cool. So I was like, how can I make this happen? The wrong decision. I wouldn't recommend anyone did do this. So it didn't even work. But I went down to 4 days a week. On the corporate thing, I do beats that I'll spend every Monday writing and I'll just take this really seriously. I didn't quite work out. But the thing I got from that was a room full of people who were so inspiring, and a person running that group who knew his stuff inside out and had been published and brought like a different set of to call them worksheets would be grossly like being unfair to them. Really amazing resources every week, pulling apart the science of storytelling from every conceivable angle. And that was the second big hit of that I got. And the interesting thing about it was, though, walking into that room at the Prince of Wales.
I know exactly where that is. That's so cool. I love it.
Do you?
Oh yeah. I used to live in King's Heath.
Did you?
Yeah.
Where are you based now?
I live in Coventry.
Okay, so no, we've never talked about this. Well, there you go. So I lived in King's Heath for a bit, and then Moseley, but that was basically my ends, right? That was my area in Birmingham, 5-6 years, and a good 2 of those years were driven by that writing group, almost becoming like all consuming. That became the only thing that I thought about. When I was at work, I was thinking about this book and the ideas that are going into it, and there was nothing more inspiring than walking into that pub, getting a pint of tribute. And whenever I have a pint of tribute these days, I can still feel like I'm going into that back room with these inspiring people. And it was like walking into a world that contained a multiverse of other worlds. Everyone brought their own thing that was so fascinating. And they were all creating their own worlds, obviously. And the answers were all there in terms of how to do it. And then you go out of that world, and it was just as crushing to leave that room as it was exhilarating to go into it, because then reality bites you back into the pissing rain of dreary Birmingham. And the only way to get the scale of this idea out of your head is to show up at the cold face of a desk and a figurative typewriter and give the best of yourself to it for 90 minutes a day for like a couple of years, and maybe get a draft and then sharpen it up over the next couple, and then maybe get published, and then maybe no one cares. So it was simultaneously the most inspiring time and the most challenging time to articulate any of it. And that's a really interesting thing. Like I call that inspiration inertia. you know you've got everything you need up here, but there's just no way of giving it a shape. So that's where I learned that and got to feel the crushing weight of that, but also really went under the hood of like what makes story go.
You mentioned that it's not something that you would recommend to anyone. Was that going down to 4 days a week?
Yeah, no, I'd say that
Because and the reason I mention that is because
yeah,
I have the opposite view. It was me going down to 4 days a week in the driving job that I had at the beginning of last year. That was what unlocked everything for me in terms of creating the space to kind of do my own thing, which then led to what I'm doing now.
yeah, I'd say, look, it's horses for courses. I don't claim to have any great advice in terms of how to.
It didn't work for you.
No, it's just the problem was, look, when I started learning guitar, it's like my fingers hurt and I couldn't form a G chord, but being able to just about play a D would get me through that. I loved sitting down and like, I loved it enough to stick at it, put it that way. I loved it enough to go through the pain. But then at that point in my life, the ideas were massive, but the words on the page never synced up. They just never worked. I didn't love the craft of writing. If I'd have loved the craft of writing, I would have done it. I would have fought through it on a daily basis, just a little bit a day. All you need is like half an hour a day of pure consistency. But I was like, no, I'll really like put all my eggs in that one basket on a Monday. And it's like, it's just not usually how getting a book done works. Yeah.
So the inspiration inertia that you talked about there, is it that you didn't show up at the coalface with your metaphorical typewriter? You didn't do that. It was too hard.
It was fits and starts. I'd make these breakthroughs and then I'd be like, oh, well, if I just went back a bit and did it like this, that would be the thing that solves it. Looking at it as a puzzle to crack rather than just get a first draft done and out. I'm always coming out in like sweaty chills thinking about like the silliness of how I went about trying to get that idea into shape. And it's only because of like all the cool thing that happened around it that, it was a very good period.
How does that experience, but a visceral experience, it seems, when you were talking about the exhilaration of going into that back room contrasted with the, I forget what words you use, but the kind of diametrically opposed feelings leading to this understanding of inspiration inertia. How does that feed into the work you're doing with your clients now? Is it something that you see often with clients, this thing that you call inspiration inertia? How does it show up?
Yeah, it shows up in if you, I don't know, have a drink with someone in a bar after a networking event and then being like so incredibly driven, just driven by this fizzing, boundless energy, similar to the ones that we've been talking about, whatever their thing is. And they've got all these incredible ideas that are beyond and beneath and riven through what they actually do, like a seam of gold, but that's not what's out there, right? But it's effectively having all the tools to be an absolutely blistering thought leader in your field, right at the front of it, talking about the ideas, the depth behind the true nature of whatever it is that the business is just some kind of tactical application of, having all of that, but it not quite getting out there. Inspiration inertia. Because they're caught up in the other stuff that they feel they have to do first.
Like what?
Just the day-to-day of running a business. It's like, oh, yeah, great, I'll be a thought leader, but I've got the business the business has to grow. Or just, like a bit like with me, that this massive idea, when the idea is so big, it's pushed so much pressure on however you choose to try and express it in the moment, that when it doesn't quite go, then you can take that as like, oh, I'm not good enough to do that. Or the idea is not quite there yet. So it just stays on the back burner. Just needs this way out. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's reflected directly.
I resonate with that within the context of these conversations that I've been having ostensibly for the podcast. In the chat we had before I pressed record, just talking about the kind of transformation, whatever that my guest experience is, that I have a sense that the amalgam of what's happened for me to allow me to create these spaces for these conversations is bigger than all the little stuff that you do to run a business. There's not too much inertia there because I am showing up and I'm having these conversations and I'm moving forward. But there does seem to be a disconnect between that and imaginary numbers that are in my bank account. Shall we say? You know what I mean? It's like I would have these conversations and continue having these conversations if no one ever pay me any money just because I get so much out of them, let alone what I've heard from my guests they get out of them. Is that something that you hear from your clients? And how do you what's required to kind of enact that shift into marrying both doing what you should, in inverted commas, do, and it kind of making your bank manager happy?
Yeah. So, right, there's a lot in that question. There's multiple questions kind of linked together, isn't it? So, so. It takes a certain kind of person to kind of enter my orbit and like want to work with me. That's the first thing. So I wouldn't say that the way I do things is for everyone. But so maybe the price of entry is being like a proper trailblazing entrepreneur that has these ideas that they know are world changing and they want to be thought leaders, right? Their ideal version of themselves is not maybe tapping with a mouse, but it's being on stage, it's being in situations like this, it's being interviewed, it's doing events.
Being on the no, not TEDx, but being on the TED stage, kind of like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, do you think you've got what it takes to get into that space in terms of like ideas? Oh yeah, definitely. Like that bit, but yeah, that's where I want to be. Yeah. And then it's just the people in that space are very, very clear on their thinking. They're able to communicate that intangible core energy mixed with their expertise. They're able to express that at the drop of a hat. They do it over and over again. They basically tell the same stories about themselves, about their audience, around their ideas over and over again. They can do it. They can adapt it to different audiences. They can do it on the fly. They can do it at the drop of the hat, and they will make you believe in the moment. They will make you believe.
Is there anyone out there that the listener might know of and be aware of that does this, that they can say, oh, okay?
Yeah, it basically, if the listener is entrepreneurial, they'll have their entrepreneurial hero, and they will be doing this. All of them. They all say, if they're out there treading the boards almost, they've got their greatest hits. And I call those core stories, right? They'll say the same things about their own journey that feed into what they're doing. They'll say the same things about the problems and the mindset shifts and the actions their audience needs to take, right? They'll talk about like what's going on in the world the same way over and over again, slightly different each time, getting better each time they do it. And they use that to achieve an effect. But the thing is, I think most of them do it instinctively. They codify their knowledge. Once they've earned it, they codify it. They've at some point they have been able to, because the business is at a certain level, it takes care of itself. They're able to rise above the business. And a lot of people say like, oh, you want to be working on the business rather than in it. But this is also a level above that. Rise above the business, see what's there, see what you've put into place. Almost take a step out of your mind, see what's there. Like, what is the best of what I know? The absolute best. How can we apportion that into its component pieces? Again, it's almost like storyboarding a film. Like figure out what goes where, what needs the volume turning up. What's your version of something that you think could be better than your entrepreneurial hero out there? What's your version of that? Stop referencing someone else to make your points. What do you think? It's the component atomic parts, the building blocks of the change you're putting out there in the world. And let's turn it into something that's just like worthy of being on that TEDx stage. Yeah, for sure.
Who's your entrepreneurial hero?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because I really feel like I need to answer this properly. Basically, my whole framework was done initially by reverse engineering how Daniel Priestley talks about his stuff. He's almost the ultimate proponent of what I call core storytelling, repeating the same ideas, slightly different every time, getting better and better and better. Reverse engineering what he did was what led to the framework itself that now I can see that everyone else is doing. But is he my entrepreneurial hero? I really do have heroes. For me, like, James Bond, your Luke Skywalkers, your Marty McFlys, your Tim Wheelers from Ash, your Liam Gallaghers. They are like, I don't want to think of them as normal people, right? My heroes are my heroes. So who's my entrepreneurial hero? The reflexive answer. I know it's weird. It isn't a singular person. It is, and I can defend this to the hill. It is genuinely the people I work with. It's whoever I'm working with in the moment. They are my entrepreneurial hero. This used to be part of my origin story in a previous life, a more simplistic version of it. So when I was young, man, I had heroes. I still do. But I would say that, look, the heroes of my youth were everyone I just listed, all those characters, right? The heroes of my present are the entrepreneurs out there. And what makes them heroic is that usually the point they're working with me, they're not the finished article. A hero, what makes a hero isn't where they end up, it's how they get there. So I get to work with people when they're on that journey somewhere, either at the start of it and they don't know how powerful what they've got is, or they're just on the cusp of their massive breakthrough that's all going to make it work, or they're just at the cusp of taking that the discoveries they've had and turning it into a business and completing their final transformation of the moment. That's a hero right in the mix. So obviously it would be weird if that wasn't my answer, because really a hero stops being interesting as a hero as soon as they've made it. It's why bands find it very difficult to write world-changing stuff after they've made it. That's on that hero's journey. So yeah, my entrepreneurial hero is whoever I'm working with in the moment.
You're your client's Obi-Wan. You're the guide.
At that point in time, yeah.
Every hero needs a guide, eh?
Hero needs a guide, but this is the thing. So I'm sure that anyone who's into marketing and storytelling, they're all going to know the story brand thing, aren't they? Where it's like, hey, you should play the guide. Like you should, but there's other parts you need to play as well. I think the game has changed a lot since then. There's times basically I'm outlining based on your questioning, because you want to go into depth on it. I'm talking about the time where I was the hero today, mainly, aren't I? Right? So so I've got to be able to fall into the line of amplifying my moments as if I was the hero, because I was the hero. I was on that journey, and I'm still it. But yeah, shifting lanes with the guide is where it becomes a business.
So you're back in rainy Moseley, miserable Moseley. Well, miserable Birmingham, but you're in Moseley. You're suffering inspiration inertia. The exploration to novel writing is not working out for you. What happened then?
Yeah, so I can skip over a lot of events here because they all chain into one. But basically, the personal stuff peters out. The band at that point, I say it doesn't go anywhere, but we fulfilled our aim in the Birmingham area. You know, headline the jug of ale.
Oh my God!
Yeah. Well, so I'll start crying if I talk about the jug of ale too much. But like that was the venue, the like of which they're just disappearing, and it isn't there anymore, is it?
Well, Hare and Hounds in King's Heath, I guess, is
still doing well.
Yeah.
Thankfully, yeah. And when we started that band, finally Calcutta, the folk band, it was like, oh, maybe one day we can headline the Jug of Ale. Like we did that quite quickly. We played some wicked gigs, did some wicked recordings, but that petered out as bands tend to do. The novel thing, just like I didn't give up on it at that point, but it was like that's just something that was going to come with me wherever. I'd run out of steam professionally. The only thing to do was to basically go freelance on the motion graphic side of things. The only place to go that wasn't Birmingham that I fancied was London. Wigan a prayer. I'll be a freelance graphics person in London. Maybe I'll start an agency. No business plan, no idea. So I get to London and I go straight back to just basically making better and better animations. But then that ran out of steam again in the freelance world. That's where I got good at, like really good at animations, like making really good stuff. But it was always me and what I brought to it. Effectively, if a business was like, oh, we want an exciting video, I'll do your animation then of flying cars and lawyers leaping around buildings for your law firm, and it'll blow your minds. And it's like, oh, they love it, brilliant. But it was all like me transplanting stories onto the top, yeah. And around a time, it became clear that I could work from anywhere, so I moved back to York, which is always the plan in the back of my head, because I just boomerang back here. I've always loved the city.
To be fair, Yorkshire's not a bad part of the world to live.
Oh, I love it. It's the business. I remember hearing Yorkshire accent on a train back up from London, where I hadn't heard one for a while, and having this wave of emotion because of like the family backgrounds and stuff. Because I don't necessarily sound like that, but though that was my family, you know. And so yeah, it was nice to return. But then it was like there became this need to get out from behind a desk. That was it. It was like, because when you get good at animation, the work will just come to you. People email you, they'll ask you to make something. You make it. Sometimes you don't even need to have a meeting with someone. I remember making this amazing stuff, finishing at like 2, 3 in the morning, and being like, well, so effing what? Like, what's next? What's going to get me closer to that, speaking to that energy within me? What, making another brilliant animation? How much more brilliant can I make these animations? And it was like, right, I'm going to go back to video. I'm going to get out and talk to people. I'm going to film it and basically throw away the decade I spent getting really good at animation and do that. But of course, I picked up a lot of stuff from my time around corporate video. So I got quite quickly into the mode of making videos for people, and that was fine.
How old were you? Just in terms of timeline, how old were you around about this sort of time?
Yeah, so you're talking like my 30s were in Birmingham, and then you're probably talking 37, 38 when I got back to York. Yeah.
And were you single, married?
Single at that point.
Still single?
Yeah. Single, yeah. This was all that time of like, yeah, meeting my now wife in that area. Like, what am I doing here in York? For a long time, it appeared that what I was doing in York was leaving animation behind and making videos for businesses in the region. And I got really good at that as well.
Well, like promotional videos kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you got a business. Right, let's make a video about your business. And rather than it being the here's what we do, it was like, well, okay, well, why do you do what you do? And it almost started out at that level, and it got deeper and deeper and deeper until I kind of hit upon something truly magical that then sparked into what I'm doing now. So effectively what it was, and it happened with a few different clients in a row, and I was like, okay, there's something like truly magical here. So I was experimenting with basically removing the camera from the equation, right? Making videos for businesses. And rather than doing an interview with lights and stuff and getting caught up in the aesthetics of it, I basically turned it into a podcast before podcasts were really a thing. I was like, let's just you and me sit with a mic. Let's talk about what you do. And it's just getting recorded into an audio device. And then I'll go and film you doing your business. And I'll make that all beautiful. But there won't be any shots of you speaking. We'll just play the audio. So I would record it and I would then piece it around to tell a really good story, pick the right music. And like, that was where like it stopped being about like getting a reaction out of someone would get them excited. It was like I'd make people cry. The business owners would cry because it would bring it all together. But even that wasn't the most exciting thing. So that could be a business on its own, making videos for organizations.
Almost like mini documentaries, really, of a business.
Exactly. Yeah. And I made some of those that were so badass. But what happened was, let's take an example of a timber construction company who sadly aren't around anymore. The pandemic did for them. But they were incredibly good at what they did. Premium timber construction videos. And I made a series of videos for them. And one of them was about the company itself. So if you talk to this kind of company, it's not too many leaps for them to start talking along the lines of, hey, we're not building buildings, we're making people's dreams into a reality. Brilliant. But then if you have deep conversations with people, I remember sitting across the table from an architect that worked there. And it was like, you go past the obvious stuff, stuff that they think they have to say, onto the stuff around, well, here's what this business really does. Then you get to the nub of like what really turns them on. And you almost like, and on the way, it almost gets philosophical. During what we were saying about stories being about something, but really they're about these universal themes. And often they appear so simple, but they're so profound and fundamental to who we are as humans that's what actually connects with people. And a story is just a vessel for the container, right? So I'm talking about buildings and stuff. And then he says something along the lines of, you can make anything special. Take something special and make it extraordinary for everyone. Does it make you smile? That's what it's all about. And it's like, huh. You see what I mean? Past all the questioning, and you end up with these four, however many words it was. Does it make you smile? 5 words. And a similar thing happened with a DJ, where he was talking about like, yes, not too much of a leap for him to say something along the lines of, it's not about the music, it's about creating an experience for someone. But then he talks about like setting up a journey for people, guiding them through it. And then he says he never got tired of looking out at the audience, seeing that one person who's totally into it, who might have anything going on in their personal life. But for that time and that moment that he's created, nothing else matters. 3 words, nothing else matters. And isn't that what music's about? Isn't that what life's about? Right? You're getting yourself in positions where you could be fully present and nothing else matters, right? He's not talking about music there. He's not talking about DJing. He's not talking about music. He's not talking about party. He's talking about life, people, what makes us go. And it's like, that is some kind of new drug that I haven't experienced yet. And the closest I could get to like describing how it feels is the first time I felt when I saw that cover band play. It's something new. But the thing with this drug is that it wasn't me chasing new ways of creating it. All I had to do is get better at forgetting about making something for someone and become more about what can I discover? How can I help more people find that? Yeah. And so it's different every time. And that is the drug that hasn't worn off. The dragon I can keep chasing and catching over and over again. And I was like, that's what the business is going to be. I don't know what shape it's going to become, but that was the key epiphany moment of like, whatever this is, it's the thing.
You mentioned that in the move back to York, that was when you met your wife. So how did that come about? How did you first meet? And also the question that I like asking is that if I was to ask your wife what she thought of you the first time you met, what would she say?
Well, around this time as well, there was a thing where I hadn't quite come to that professional epiphany yet. So even in York, I was like doing stuff like, street performing. I wrote like a 10,000 word monologue, invented this character, like performed it and spent like a year writing it. That's probably like the early days of just after when she met me. So I imagine she was like, what's going on here? Yeah. So all of that was going on, trying lots of different things. I was running video workshops, lots of stuff I haven't mentioned yet, trying different things to find the next professional level. And almost the creativity and the corporate stuff, like in a massive mishmash. So she must have just been like, look, I'm just going to hang around this guy because he seems like kind of a fun dude. This will coalesce at some point.
So how did you meet?
Oh, it was classic internet vibes. Yeah, she was like, "Oh, you look like you could give me a tour guide of a tour of York." I was like, "Yeah, well, as it happens, I probably can." So we did what we did, and it was fun.
So you're just saying that at the time you were still trying to see what the next thing was that you could make, and then you had this like epiphany that actually it was about helping other people figure out what their nothing else matters was. So how did you go about that? How did you? What was the transition from having that epiphany? What did you do next? What was the start of the journey to what you're doing now?
Yeah, so having that epiphany at the time, it wasn't like a clear route opened up. Something else had to happen on the way, and that thing was AI. So what happened was the business at that time was called Content Captain, and it was still around this idea that like, well, heck, what I do is make videos for people. I started making these talking head videos and trying to get to that heart of the thing, of the matter. Yeah. But it was still around like, well, we make videos for you. But then AI hit and I was scheduled to do a talk at the Guildhall, which is like the kind of the center for business in the town. I didn't know what it was going to be about. But then ChatGPT came out in November of whatever year it was, 22 maybe. And I had to do this talk at the end of January. And I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to talk about because all I can think about is AI and where it's going to lead the internet in terms of content. And I was like, I don't think I want to be in that game. I don't want to be in that content game. So I basically used that talk as a kind of existential pep talk to myself as to, all right, if I was going to lay out what I think the world needs to do more of, and basically use that as an allegory for what I think the business should be, here's what I think it should be. And what it basically came down to was like, I'm going to completely forget anything to do with making things for people. I'm going to look at the best entrepreneurs out there and figure out how they do it, how they are able to express that incredible energy. And this is everything we talked about before, yeah? It's all of that. This is where I made the decision to figure that out. I'm going to decode how they do it, how they make people believe by the words they say and the energy they transmit and the ideas they pull together, how they do it. I remember like trying to make this Steve Jobs pitch. And I'm going to be like, there'll be a set of core stories that they tell, and I'm going to find them. And it took a lot of work to find them. I thought, you know what I mean?
So, in a way, though, Nico, you did find the next thing that you were going to make, you were going to build. You know, you're saying you got as far as you could with animation videos. You were looking for this next thing. So you were still bringing that same desire to create something big. It just so happened that it was just way bigger than anything you'd done before.
Definitely. And this is where it all comes together, which is like the core story framework. So look, marketing frameworks, say 10 a penny. There's lots of them, and there's lots of brilliant ones. And the best marketing frameworks in the world could be laid out in a Word document. I'm a part of a community and they do all their teaching from Word documents. The ideas are so strong. But my need to create something that gets me buzzing meant that I created my framework as a deck of cards, beautifully designed, like refined and destroyed and rebuilt over 2 years following that talk. Because I needed a way of categorizing this stuff. I had to have it be tangible in my hand and be able to see where people are because I'm so visual, right? But that framework brings together all of this idea of searching for the buzz that I had when I was, listening to that covers band when I was young, the ambition to just make something, i.e. turn a thought into an asset that I had when I was doing the music, the science behind all the storytelling stuff that Andy Killeen and the Prince of Wales taught me. There's all the hero's journey stuff I learned from Lord of the Rings. It brings it all together. Like all of me gets poured into this framework that can keep getting refined, but its sole purpose, really, that's not even true. 50% of its purpose is to get this result out of people and to find what they're into. The other part, yeah, it's probably for me. I express myself through that framework. Like that's my great asset. At this point in time, I only see that basically being added to, evolved, and the methodologies around it being extended. I don't want to write another novel. I don't like, that's where all my creative energy is going. It's an absolute, I love it. It's a buzz.
You used the term reverse engineer when you were talking about Daniel Priestley, and I guess you're doing the same with Steve Jobs. That's the result that we got. This reverse engineering. That seems to me to be a different set of skills than creating an awesome animation. Why and how did you manage to do that? Because it's very difficult to stay energized in doing something where we don't have the skills. I mean, does any of that resonate with you?
Yeah, it just became a case of coming up with that intellectual property and having it get mature enough to the point where it can do a lot of the heavy lifting once you understand it. So basically, and it took a lot of getting here, right? 2 years of refinement on this, but effectively, the promise that I throw out there is that, look, if you play me a clip of some hot entrepreneur who's like really, really just getting people to believe in what they're on about, they're saying something and it's important to their business, then it should fit somewhere on that core story framework, right? So I should be able to go, yeah, they're talking about here, that's a mindset shifter. That fits there. And in terms of when you talk about skill set, a mindset shifter is all about like the way that they feel their audience needs to think differently in order to get a result. And I can tie that directly to like oceans of storytelling science of who's playing the guide in that scenario and how you need to think about it and why that resonates with people if you lay it out like this. Yeah. So it's a way of categorizing the very best of your ideas and categorizing how you got to the point that is absolutely rooted in storytelling science. And if you want to get stuck into that, if you want to get better at telling those stories, then within the community, we dive when necessary right into that. But if someone just wants the results of it, then I can just be like, hey, that thing you just said, that's way bigger than you think it is. And here's why, because here's where it fits into the framework. Here's what it connects to. Here's where it could lead. I can show you incredible things about that thought you just had without you having to lift a finger. Just talk to me about it. You know what I mean? So skill set is 100% storytelling, but it's almost like knowing how to shape the containers for people to pour stuff in. But the containers are no longer these massively spectacular creations of mine. The containers are transparent, right? So what the people I work with have is spades. Spades is the energy, that core energy we mentioned, the expertise, that's crucial. Go to good at what you do. So what I can provide in that moment, however I choose to do it, is expression, right? Energy, expertise, and the ability to help people to express that through ideas, through story, to ultimately uncover the story they're telling right now, the sum total of everything they're asking people to believe in.
People talk about a forever home. Is this your forever business? You sent some in whatever iteration it is.
Yeah, it feels like it. It depends on how you want to look at this. Like whatever I'm into at the moment is the forever thing on a creative level. Like the stupid, that thing, that street tour I did, that was the thing. It was wicked. The novel, it was the thing, and I couldn't see anything else apart from it. The reason this business I think is so powerful now is because of the times we're living in and the fact that it basically ticks every box that I can imagine for myself, apart from like, my inner circle, my family relationships, right? Which are obviously the most important thing. But this has an outlet for all my creative energy, but it's also what I think the world needs going forwards, what people need. I think people want to remain relevant, and I want people to remain relevant in the world. I think the illogical nature of, human ideas needs to still be at the forefront of whatever's next. Otherwise, it will only be like everything AI. I used to say, I still do, that if technology eats itself and it all goes really bad, as long as there's two people around a campfire and one is trying to convince the other of something and they've got a deck of story captain cards, then they're still valid, right? But I think that's what we need going forward. So it's almost like it's my duty. I can't think of any other idea that's going to help that. So yeah, until such time as something and there's another massive zig, like this is how I can help people change the world.
So tell me more about the story captain cards. What are they? How do they work?
If you boil it down and listen to anyone talking, there's effectively 5 things they're going to be talking about connected to their business or really connected to whatever change they're trying to put in the world. Let's just put it like that. Themselves, the challenges that their audience is going through, that's category 2. The transformations that can happen if an audience implements their expertise. The big picture, what's going on in the world and society, that's the 4th category. And then the business itself, talking about them and what they're currently doing. And then within those, it all happens in threes. There's 3 core stories within each of those categories that almost act like acts in themselves. And each one of those core stories is represented by a card. And basically, it's a case of getting your versions of those core stories, right? So there's lots of different names for them. There's a mindset shifter, there's a turning point, there's a dystopia, there's an engine of change, there's an epiphany, there's a first chapter. I've been through so far, and my origin story in today's talk, I've done my first chapter archetype, and I've done my epiphany archetype. And I know exactly where each one ended, which let me just talk about them at length. Once I know what they are, if someone was just like, oh, how did you get here? I could tell that story in like 2 sentences. Just happens today, we're going into detail, right?
It's a bit more space, yeah.
Yeah. So we get your versions of those, your version of the first chapter, your version of the epiphany, your version of the transformation stories. And then there's another set of cards beneath those that are going to help you draw out the insights that make up those core stories the first time through. And there's an AI element as well, because the thing got like developed outside of AI. It now makes it a really good fit for technology to take you through that process as well. So effectively, the cards are just these containers for drawing out your big world-changing ideas, elevating them, showing you which ones are important, giving a shape to that visionary energy.
So maybe I...
No, I just spotted it. They're like doing exactly the thing that was tripping me up so badly in Birmingham. Having all these ideas. How do I express them? How do I give them a shape? How do I get them out? I want to be in a band. How do I turn it into a song? I want to make films. How do I turn it into that? I've got some idea. How do I get it out? That's what story captain is. That's what those cards are in the first instance.
So it's basically you've created the solution to inspiration inertia.
Yep. As a first step.
What do you mean?
Yeah. I sometimes thought I'd just let that drop. So here's a cool thing you might enjoy. You know when people talk about like outcomes of businesses? It's like, hey, if you work with us, this is going to happen. That's a transformation category. But if you think about transformations in stories, they don't happen straight away. All the stuff that we've been talking about happens, right? So in let's say Star Wars, and it's easy to pin down in trilogies where you can see heroes really go on quite clearly delineated journeys. If you look at the first Star Wars film as like Obi-Wan Kenobi's the guide, right? And Luke Skywalker's having all these troubles, and he basically gets Luke to reach out with his feelings in that film, to use the Force. So the first thing that happens with that is Luke has a bit of success with that training droid, but then he manages to destroy the first Death Star. So I call that sense a breakthrough moment core story. Here are the things that were going to happen if you implement our expertise fully for the first time. What most people do is they talk about transformations as if all the brilliant stuff has happened. They'll talk about, oh yeah, you could become a key person of influence or like the superstar entrepreneur. It's like, that's not going to happen straight after I start working with you. It's a progress. It's a sequence of events. It's a story. So if I say to you, oh yeah, great, it'll give you a shape for all that visionary energy. It's like, yeah, that's great. But it's the first thing you'll get. You'll get what I call a clarity cascade. That's great. You start to see the connections between where you came from to the ideas you're having. But that's just the beginning. So the next thing that happens is the Empire Strikes Back in Star Wars, right? Which is everything gets more serious. A whole new world opens up. And it's like, this wasn't as happy-go-lucky as I thought it was. The Force is way more complicated than I thought it was. I'm meeting new mentors. My goals are changing completely. I'm having these wild realizations. I'm getting a shed load more problems. This is way harder than I thought it was back when it was all fun and games. And that happens with any service-based business worth its salt, is that it's going to get you more ambitious outcomes, which means the world opens up. So I call that a new frontier core story archetype. So let's say you've got a shade to that visionary energy. Then it's like, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. I'm now in this world of the game of stories where I recognize that I'm talking about this stuff all the time. So I need to codify it as I go. I need to create new stories to achieve what I want to achieve. This is initially a bit overwhelming. I've got to get good at this. And it's only by thriving in that new frontier that you can begin to really turn into the final thing, right? I might call it like a legendary thought leader or an infinite impact storyteller, whatever the heck. And that's the Jedi Knight, right? It's only by coming to terms with that new world in The Empire Strikes Back, right, that Luke can finally, he pushes through and then he becomes the Jedi Knight. So the point where you're able to communicate, as those people in TED Talks do, as those people on stage do, your visionary energy, your ideas at the drop of a hat, instinctively adapting it for tone, no matter who you're in front of, being able to basically have ideas on the fly and give them a shape and see the impact of them straight away. That's where you end up, right? And really basically zero friction between you having an idea and seeing the impact in the world. But that ain't going to happen as soon as you start dealing these cards out. You know what I mean? That's a story.
What has this been able to do for you? What are you now able to do that you weren't able to do before you kind of codified this framework?
Well, here's the interesting thing, Pete, is that I'm living through my grander origin story right now. And I'm just coming out of what I would call a breaking point card where nothing seems to be working. So effectively, what's been happening over the last year is that I've been doing, I did multiple accelerators, a ton of one-to-one work and a community. And I've been getting these great results for people, like almost by the seat of my pants, adapting the framework on the fly on like a, minute to minute basis. And it keeps like, just like almost like writing in circles. Okay, it's good, it's good, it's good. Okay, go back a bit, refine. It's good, it's good, it's good. Okay. Me building this framework around these results, getting them breakthroughs for these people. And they're loving it, right? But it's almost like I've been the fitness coach over the last year, and there's no real video evidence of this fitness coach even running up a flight of stairs. If you see what I mean. I've been doing it for people, and it's only in the last couple of months that two things have happened. One is that the framework is mature enough for me to run it on myself and trust in the system rather than the brilliance of a coach, which is obviously what I've been able to provide for my clients, and AI. So I've basically turned AI and the methodology plugged into it into something that you can train to draw this stuff out of yourself and give it shape. So I've been able to do that in the past few months. So I'm right at the point now where I've just got my origin story in order and it's changed everything for me going forward. All this stuff I'm talking about with energy today, that was a breakthrough from this morning. If we'd have done this podcast when it was originally intended to be done, I don't think I would have mentioned the word energy once. But it's been the underpinning thing.
So this is breaking news. We need to get this episode out like as soon as possible.
Yep.
With everything that you've done and you've known and you've worked on, and the story cards and coaching other people, and that's only going to come out of the work that you've done on yourself. Where did that come from? Where did that realization come from? And why did it take so long to come to you?
Which realization specifically? Sorry.
Well, you said that if we'd done this podcast like a few months ago, you wouldn't have talked about energy once.
Yeah, well, basically, the way I've got the breakthroughs for people has been through like pure one-on-one or group legwork. You know what I mean? And on the face of it, it's like, I can't find another me to draw that out, to see the connections that I can't. Just because I know how to do this doesn't necessarily mean I can see the connections.
In yourself, you mean?
Yeah, in myself, I could get a sense of them, but before the framework was refined and before the tech, it was quite a long, drawn-out process. But now it's been accelerated, and I can turn AI into a collaborator. It's not as simple as turning AI into another me. It's getting AI to like draw out the best of you and shape it as a genuine collaborator rather than someone doing it for you. And as soon as I started doing that and refining the framework at the same time, it all just came of age basically. And I was like, right, I could dive into looking at my individual moments, knowing that I could piece them together way quicker in AI. Because there was a long time where it's like, well, do I need a story coach? And I've seen people do this, like, other storytellers getting story coaches. It's fine, but I can't be selling this framework as a solution to problems until I've used it to solve my own. You know what I mean? And even then, this is inspiration inertia in full force. I know all this stuff in the same way that most people I work with, deep down, they know all this stuff. I'm part of a community. There's all sort of things around like mindset and all this stuff and business models as well. And it's always been like, look, you need to get your own core story straight. And I was fighting it for a while, for a long time, in fact. So I was like, look, this isn't really about story captain. I almost wish I hadn't called it story captain sometimes, was what I was saying a couple of months ago. It's really about ideas. And they were like, get your core story straight and get them out there and lead with that. I was like, well, I'm not there yet. They're just like, look, just do it. And they were right. Because the fact is, you can have all the brilliant ideas in the world, you can codify them and you can present them. But as surely as the sun sets in the west, if you get clear on where you began and what brought you here, and you go a few layers beneath that, it will change the shape of those ideas. And in a world where ideas are cheap and thought leadership is everywhere, it's the energy that you're going to discern from the journey that colors in the picture that is going to get you on that stage these days. I just couldn't see it. I had to have it hammered in by people who knew me better than myself of like, I don't think story's that big a deal. It is. It's not the only thing, but like you need it in there. And to have that, to be able to go through that finally at this point, basically 3 years into this business, 2 years into developing the framework, to finally be like, no, I know what this is about now. I can feel it. And because I feel it, changes the way I talk about it.
It's proof positive of something I've always thought, that business is the ultimate playground for personal development.
Yeah, you're right.
Everything you described in terms of developing the story cards and that framework has been about developing Nico and helping him become an ever better version of him that he's capable of being.
Yeah. I think, look, I identify that as a mindset shift, the core story, if you want one of yours, which is what you need to realize is business can be the ultimate playground for personal development. It's like, ooh, that's interesting. So if you kept talking about that, you know what I mean? But no, I agree completely. It can but it can be. I think it would be fair to say that for most people, it isn't.
Well, just hearing you say there, then I recognize another mindset shifter for me is, and you will know the antithesis to this saying, but for me, I say it's personal because it's business.
Mm. What you need to realize is it's personal because it's business. That's one of those things that, like, you could throw it out there and it's this pithy, like, saying, but I bet you could talk for 90 minutes just about that concept.
Yeah, I could.
And it'll soon become clear who the expert is.
It's not personal; it's business. It's responsible for so much shit,
There you go.
and it's the opposite. Yeah. Wow. So hearing you, and I kind of doubt that the word energy wouldn't have been used a couple of months ago when we spoke, because you've been nothing but energetic and just you've been fizzing, and but maybe that was missing 2 months ago. I don't know. So in light of that, and that energy is going to be transmitted through the sound waves that come out in this podcast. Why would anyone not work with you, or why should someone not work with you?
Well, hey, Pete, that's an interesting question. As I said before, it takes a certain kind of, you have to want a certain kind of thing. Because, there's previous versions of this business were centered around, like, articulating messaging a bit more. But now it really is about this idea of, like, you want to be the cutting edge thought leader. That's the energy we're gonna run with. Why wouldn't someone work with me? If I'd be brutally honest, almost on myself, is it's another case of me needing to do what I help my clients do. No one wakes up in the morning and thinks, hey, do you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to get my core story straight, right? In the way that you've been, but people do wake up in the morning and say, like, hey, I know what a podcast is. I'd quite like one. So if you get in their eye line, then you're going to have a shot. And then it's a case of demonstrating why, hey, yes, it's a podcast, but it's not just a podcast. And then you can almost start from the other way in. You see what I mean? You start with the thing they want, and then obviously that thing, you do it better than anyone else because of the methodology you bring to it. And then there's more and more depth to that. I don't quite have that. I've kept it like super pure, which means, hey, if someone is into storytelling, then great. They're gonna have a home. But I've a lot of legwork to do in terms of telling the story as to why this is something that's urgent and more urgent than a lot of the stuff that they're currently focusing on. So usually I would say that if someone wouldn't work with me, it's because they haven't got the full picture yet.
And that's on you.
That's down to me. I've got to create the core stories to get people there. I've got to meet people where they are. I've got to talk. And look, that's a nightmare state core story, meeting someone where they are, the problems they have. But there's not only one. So inspiration inertia is a nightmare state core story. It might not be the one, but if I'm talking about that and someone feels like, oh yeah, I feel like that, even though they hadn't even considered anything about storytelling, there's an opening. I said, oh, if you're feeling like that, why is that affecting you? Where could that go? And then it's like, you see what I mean?
In what you just said there, I can see now why having AI trained on your, presumably you've trained an AI on your core story methodology. I can see now why having that and you're able to apply your methodology on yourself has given you the breakthroughs it has. I understand that.
100%.
And presumably that allows you to, I mean, you're probably not going to give it away for free, but in a way allows you to democratize to a certain extent what you're doing, because there's no very little marginal cost to you of getting the chatbot out there. So what's your vision for this once you've got better at telling these core stories? How are you going to change the world with the core story framework?
Yeah, I think there will be effectively 3 levels to it, because ideas are cheap these days. And, I could get all of, pick your favorite business coach, all of Tony Robbins' books. I could just plow them into the GPT. Someone will have already done this and basically have Tony Robbins as a coach with his methodology. So why isn't everyone, getting those results? It's because there's still something about the weight of human interaction, right? So effectively, I foresee 3 levels to this, Peter. And the first is to give away as much as possible. So the deck of cards will very soon be printed out and be freely available for the cost of postage with some kind of basic introductory. Probably not, it's an introduction to them because the course would be too much. It's just like, there's so much depth to it. It's just the principles of it. And there's somewhere along the line, a tech aspect. But here's something that I think is really important is that like the most brilliant chatbot and GPTs, they're all out there and everyone is obsessed with the idea of scale and they're all going to be amazing, or at least they're all going to look amazing. So I think a business like needs a bit of a trifecta once they start to get serious about this, which is something that can live on in people's heads or in the real world away from a screen in a positive way. That would be the deck of cards. The second is some element of human interaction, whether that is through a community or one-to-one, something that requires a bit of accountability on a purely human level, on an emotional level, some unpredictability, some zigs and zags. That's part 2. And the third one is the tech to speed it up together. So I see like, look, yeah, the cards will be freely available, but you got to be careful of how to do that. But then the community aspect, bringing people together who are all trying to do the same thing, working with the same methodology, group calls. That's what's happening now. And the resources are there. And that's where the proper course is there because I can be there in the community and all the group calls. I can be like, right, go and check this bit of the course out, but bear this in mind rather than just hoping to make a scalable course that I can sell 1 million of in a day, right? Keep that scarcity of that connection there. Yeah, let's do this together, the community side, and then a team of story captains whose job it is to almost shadow the leading thought leaders of the day, keep their ideas up to snuff, and effectively codify them as they go, asynchronously with like, monthly meetings, and basically build the core story banks for people, which is what we do in the community, build out these core story banks. But this is maybe the last big zig, is that I could easily turn that business into some kind of content creation business and come full circle. I could tell the story that, hey, what originally turned me off content creation, going through this journey, now we're back to it. And now we can create this, we can use AI to interrogate these story banks in interesting ways. And we can. I actually want to zig again. And I'm like, rather than create content, I want to know how we can understand these core stories better so these people can understand themselves and point the way to the next set of ideas they have and the next stage of their journey that is still being written. And let's dig even harder away from this idea of creating things for people, and let's create how they're going to change the world with their ideas, with their core stories. That's where I see it going.
There's a guest I had on the podcast last year, and one of the things that I see him sign off his LinkedIn posts or emails with is inwards and upwards, as opposed to onwards and upwards. And it just, you just like articulated that as well. It's about going in and going deep.
Yeah, I'm annoyed that would be a perfect core story for me. Inwards and upwards. Yeah, inwards and upwards. What I get, my version of it, I think it would be like higher, further, faster. It's like, look, let's set our ambitions higher. Let's push our ideas further. Let's get there faster.
How can the listener and I help you the most right now in where you're at and what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I admit I didn't have an answer for this when the podcast started. I knew it was one of the ones that I would I would need, because the obvious thing is like, hey, visit storycaptain.co.uk, take the quiz. But if I like, this is where it's like, what is this business for in the world? Which is basically the answer to what am I here for in the world as of right now. I think what I'm here in the world for right now is for everyone to just take a breath, get a sense of where you've been. And if you're listening that far and you've heard all this podcast, think about the 2 eras of your life that I touched on in mind. Who were you right at the beginning of that journey, where it was all about influences and gaining input? Who were you then? And then think about that second period of your life, which I call the epiphany period, which is you finding your unique twist that you're going to bring. And just look at the ideas that you're currently bouncing around in your business through those lenses and just elevate them, right? Just aim higher in your ambitions as to where those ideas, if you viewed them as completely unique to you and you push them further, look at your ideas through the most ambitious lens you can. And how can you get on stage and just blow people's minds by talking about them? Just think of it like that.
I've had a lot of inspirational people on this podcast, and I can't think off the top of my head, getting to the end of a conversation and feeling so inspired to go and make stuff happen. And I just hope that the listener feels even half of what I'm feeling at the end of this conversation. There's one other question that I ask every guest at the end of every episode, and that is, who do you think would really value and appreciate this conversation? Who would you like to give a £250 gift to have this conversation experience with me? Who do you think would value and appreciate it the most?
So the value of going through what we've just gone through is going to be useful for anyone, no matter any point they're at. And I'm talking from even before putting a spade in the ground in a business sense to being a best-selling author. There's always value in going through this stuff. And the way that you've brought it into a shape is brilliant. Anyone can get value from it. But to narrow down, I think this conversation would come at a brilliant time for business owners who are, what did I call it? I haven't used this timeline for a while. It was kind of like you have the starting blocks, breathing room. That's it. Breathing room. So I think it's going to be super useful, especially for business owners who they've been through like the skirmish mode of early business. The value proposition's in place. Like it's earning, but they've got a sense that if they just take a little bit of time and get some perspective on this, if they could just get a sense of the bigger picture, there's something there. I think that's the real key moment. So the business is doing well, and maybe they want to start getting onto those more podcasts. Maybe they want to start doing more events. They're just on that cusp, and it's just having this conversation in the bag will save trial and error, which means it saves money, right? Which means it makes money. Sorry, it'll save you money in that sense that the energy you take with and the ideas you take with you onto those larger stages will be more resonant, and there'll be less back and forth.
I think that what you expressed there is that sense of creating space to breathe and to reflect is going to be beneficial to everyone. But I'm looking for a name of an individual, a human who you know.
Oh, I see.
Who's maybe at that stage or not, who you think would just absolutely both love the experience and appreciate the value that they get out of it. You're pretty straight on your core stories. I mean, I know you're doing work on them, and you've done a lot of the reflective work already. I hope that I'd like to hope and think that what I've created for you here in this space is an opportunity to tell those stories in a really organic, natural way at a length and a depth which you've perhaps not done before. It's an environment where somebody who's done the work that you do with them to maybe even practice telling their stories in an environment. I do not have the skills or the ability or even the inclination to do what you do in terms of helping people get clear on their core stories. I just want to create a space where people can tell their stories, whatever work they've done in terms of figuring it out. I'm
with you. As soon as you made that twist, this would be perfect for, I can think of multiple people who I've worked with, or rather I'm working with right now. And we're on that absolute cusp of, getting those things in line. And it would be an amazing proving ground. So yeah, I can give you one name.
One person gets a £250 gift. So who do you think would value it the most?
Oh man, I'm going to say another guy. I'm going to say Elliot. I'm going to say Elliot Fern.
Right. So we'll pick up offline about how to make that happen. I still haven't figured out my process around that, but I just know that people that come on and value the experience, the recommendations they provide is going to be good. It just remains on behalf of the listener and me, Nico, to say thank you for sharing elements of your core story and your non-straight line journey with us. It's been an absolute blast, and I'm looking forward to sharing more of our mutual non-straight lining journeys over the coming months and years.
Rock and roll. I enjoyed it so much, Peter. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Not a Straight Line. If this conversation helped to reorient your internal compass or inspired you in any way, please let us know by heading to podcast.notastraightline.life/rate and leave a rating and review. Thanks as always to Matthew Bliss of MB Podcast Services for his exquisite engineering of this episode. If you'd like him to help you with your podcast, contact details are in the show notes. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or there's someone whose non-straight line journey you'd just love to hear, then please visit podcast.notastraightline.life/guest. Thanks for being here with me, and I'll see you next week for another amazing, deep, inspiring non-straight line journey. Love you.